It is September, which means it is time to celebrate some indie and self-pub sci-fi. Hello everyone, welcome back to a fictional escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is all about self-pub sci-fi that I've enjoyed, and also a couple of TBR additions at the end of the video for some that I would like to read in the near future. There is a lot of wonderful science fiction available to us in the indie and self-pub world, and the stack that I have today have made me really excited, and these have come from reads that I've had over the last 5 years or so, since I've really gotten into self-pub. So today, I have 10 books, which some of them are series. I believe all of them are series, question mark. Let me quickly scan through. All but one are series you can go ahead and sink your teeth into. So this is not by any means an extensive list. There are so many good sci-fi books out there, and like I said, I'll add a TBR at the end for some that I want to go ahead and read in the near future. But these are ones that I've really enjoyed, that I think if you enjoy variations of sci-fi subgenres, you might go ahead and enjoy them too. I'm going to start off with one that knocked my socks off as the series continued, and I've been lucky enough to alpha read the third book, which is up and coming in this series, and that is the Star Children Saga by Palmer Pickering. Now, the Moonlight is not going to like this gloss cover very much. It's a little bit beat up because it's been read a couple of times, and my wife Rachel is currently working her way through this and book 2 at the moment in anticipation for book 3 coming out. This follows two fated twins, Tor and Cassidy, who are taken from their home on Earth and placed on the moon in basically military camps. This is a story of the prophet of the Star Children Saga. We can see them here with the crystals that they have in their hands, which play a bigger part in this story. Now, what I like about what I've read of this one so far is the immense amount of character growth that these two have had to go through. Now, at varying points, I will admit I liked one over the other, but as they come together and they start working towards their prophecy, they start to really grow in to themselves. Now, they're 21, I believe, in this series, and they grow with the series as they continue, but they're very much trying to find themselves, who they are outside of the people, who they are outside of their parents, and they've grown up. Taurus is past military, he's already gone and lived a life. Cassie's very much finding her way to herself, and they go through just so much in the two books. Book 2, Light Fighters, blew me away. Book 3 blew me away, even in the alpha read, so I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on the book once it comes out for release to everyone. I've had such a good time with the Star Children Saga. I think it is super underrated for a epic space opera, military space opera, and if you like those kinds of things and you like some heavy character work, this may be one that you want to sink your teeth into, but I've had a very good time with it thus far. The next one that I want to bring up is, I've only read the first book in it. I believe there's 4 books in the main series, and there are a couple of novels that are like side companions, or they're within the same world, but they can be read separately. And this is going to be the Primaterre by S.A. Tholen, or Sophie Tholen if you're over on X. This book packs so much into it, and it is chunky. I think it's around 600 pages, but it's small font. And man, like, I'm thinking about this book years later, and when I first finished this one, I was like, I'm going to need at least 12 months before I pick up the next book. And at this point, I think it's been 2 years, and I'm finally ready, and I'm so keen to jump into the next book in the Primaterre, which is called Lonely Castles. This follows it's like an archaeological dig gone wrong, and we have like contact with different beings. We have a hard military captain who ends up being, almost spoiled it there, has to go and look for another person on this planet. I remember spiders, lots of spiders in there. I remember lichen, lots of lichen, but there are some really cool tech, some very high impact action scenes in here. If you like military sci-fi, then you're probably going to enjoy The Iron Truth. Huge amounts of character growth within the first book, and I can only speculate on how much that is going to grow throughout the series. So I've read the first book. I highly recommend it. This won the first ever SPSFC competition, and for good reason. I can't wait to pick up Lonely Castles in the near future. The next one that I have here is The Forbidden Planet. This is by Brian Wilson. I'll put the cover up here. I really need to continue on with this series as well. This is kind of like Tomorrow Where the War Began. If you enjoy Tomorrow Where the War Began, you're probably going to have a good time with this. We follow a young lad. I think his name is Colton. I'll put it on the screen if I've gotten that wrong, who has like a first contact situation. There is a bunch of friends. There are young boys. I say that as I'm in my mid-30s. They are young teens, early 20s, who are coming into themselves and dealing with powers that be that are much, much bigger than them. I remember this one being such a fun time, and if you do like those adventure sort of coming of age in space vibes, then you're going to have a good time with The Forbidden Planet. The next one is a series that I have completed, and that is the Song of Kamaria by T.A. Bruno. This is an interesting character-heavy space opera, which delves into horror aspects the more you get into the series. So the first book is very much a setup book. We're following the main characters as young adults as they move to a new planet and sort of get used to life there. They start going on expeditions. Book 2, we follow, I believe it's the children. I don't want to give away too much, but we have like different generations throughout the 3 books, and while the main characters and the parents are still there, we follow them in different scenarios in each book. What I thought was really fun about this whole series is the first book is very accessible. It guides you, it has a learning curve, it has some comforting elements of the space opera genre. We're going into expeditions, we're going exploring, we have like a slow burn romance undertone in there, and it was just really fun to read. And then as books 2 and 3 come into the picture, they ramp up, and we get those horror elements that I was talking about, particularly in books 2 and book 3. I also thought there was some real creative character creation in these books as well, and I had a really good time trying to picture, because I am a visual reader, picture the characters and the creatures that came out from this. And yeah, like some of the scenes that we had, especially towards the end, T.A. Bruno has a real habit of like full ramp up in that last 20%. Edge of your seat, heart in your chest. I could not put it down. For each one of these 3, the last 20% just flies. But I had a really good time with the series as a whole. The next one I have kind of shocked me, and I have 2 superhero books here, which I'll put together. The first one is a book called Initialize by Samuel Fleming, and I read this for the SPSFC competition a little while ago. Now, I do not gravitate towards superhero stuff at all. Not a Marvel fan, not a DC fan. Very rarely will I go, I want to look at superheroes, because like just having powers, not a thing for me that I really enjoy. But this was fast-paced, fun. Again, we've got that coming-of-age element. We've got a young man who wants to become a superhero and is fighting for it, does some work for a particular, I think it's an institution, and then ends up becoming one, and the learning curve of what that means for him. I had a great time with this. I need to go into the second book at some point, but I remember being so pleasantly surprised by this superhero book, which I normally wouldn't care about at all, but I had a really fun time with it. In a similar vein, JCM Byrne has been able to write a character who is one of my favorite characters of all time, and it's really Rohan that keeps me coming back to this series, because again, it's superhero based, not something I generally enjoy, but Wistful Ascending and the Hybrid Helix series just took me by surprise. Really, really pleasant surprise, and I think it comes down to this guy here, and also the creative nonsense that JCM Byrne can bring out of his head and onto the page, like the space bears and the land sharks, the giant land sharks that we had in book 2. We've got that sort of monster of the week element so far. I'm 2 books in. I have the 3rd book to go, which I'll hopefully get to this year, where Rohan is called away to do X, Y, and Z to XY creature and help out in whatever ways he can. What I really appreciated between books 1 and book 2 is we got so much more context for Rohan and the people around him in his life. I also like that there's things like casual queerness, which are just like, yeah, that's a thing, but we're not going to talk about it. It's not a point to bring into this story. It's just a thing, because people are also just queer. And I really like that element to it. Rohan is just like, I feel like he wants to be an asshole, but he's so inherently good that he kind of goes, okay, I'm just going to go and help because that's what I know how to do, and I can relate. So I've had a really good time with it. We have like different powers. He used to be known as the Griffin, and I'm sure there is a darker undertone, I believe, that is going to be coming up at some point in one of the books. But I've had a really fun time with this series so far, and I can't wait to continue on with it. I think we're up to like book 6 or 7 at this point, and I have most of them on my ebook, but I do have the third one in physical, so hopefully we'll get to that one soon. The next one I have for you is a dystopian space opera, which this is the first time that I ever thought of those words together, or I ever experienced those subgenres together. This is going to be Eclipse by Herman Stuernagel. Now, I remember being quite captivated with this one, and the writing of the first book, again, the characters, the idea of like the planet just being completely effed like Earth and having to live on these space stations is something that I think about probably too often. For someone who reads more fantasy than sci-fi, I think that's sort of changing gears a little bit at the moment. But I really liked the blend that Herman Stuernagel was able to put into Eclipse. Now, I haven't gone on to the second and third books. I have them, but I haven't gone on to read them yet. So I am basing my enjoyment on the first one here, but I'm hoping to go on to books 2 and book 3 at some point in the near future. But I had a really fun time with Eclipse. Again, I thought it was a concept which was interesting and quite well done. I really like some of the darker undertones that we have with the story as well. So even though we're dealing with a bunch of different characters who are interacting, maybe they haven't been as forthcoming with information about the particular planet that we were fleeing. So I'm going to leave you with that, and hopefully that is non-spoilery. Next up, we have a book that, again, took me by surprise because I'm not a first contact guy. But Red Hail by Jamie Killen, I really love it, and I constantly look at whether this author has other books out, and we haven't seen one in a little while. But Red Hail was a story of a series of plague symptoms that happened, I believe it was 60 years apart. So we follow this in dual timelines. We follow it in the present, and we also follow it 60 years in the past, because we have these characters who are like, oh, my family went through this in the past. This is what's happening. And even though we get a sense and we understand as the reader what is happening next and what plague symptoms are going to happen next to this town that we're in, the scramble of the people in the present to try and alleviate the pressures, to try and beat this plague that is coming down, that is the Red Hail, was really, really interesting, and not a subject or not a subgenre that I generally gravitate towards. But I thought it was really well done. We also have like a child protagonist in this one who is trying to help with the plague symptoms, and I thought that was really fascinating. So Red Hail is one that I recommend to nearly anyone, even if you don't read sci-fi, because it was just such an enjoyable book and such a surprising book for me personally. Next up, we have Dystopian Zombies in Three Rivers Plague. This is by Joshua and Zachary Forbes. These are, it sounds silly, it sounds weird, not silly, it sounds weird to say these are comfort books for me, because they are fucking horrific. We are following the apocalypse. So Thomas and his bandmates are out playing a show one night in Three Rivers Plague when green mist starts coming from the ether, from above, and then the audience turns into hunches or zombies. This is a zombie tale with mafia-esque politics and rivalries, and just, it's action-packed, it's horrific. There were some scenes in the second book which like made my skin crawl with these zombie creatures or these hunches. We have egos at play within these mafia-esque politics. We have the scientific advancement of having to find cures or having to find things that can stop the hunch plague from progressing. It was really fun. It's action heavy. My criticism for this one lies mainly in the character work, but if you're someone like me who doesn't need your characters to be full-bodied and like real character studies on each and every one, I think this is such a fun romp to jump into. I will say that I can see the authors really trying to build on character work in book 2, and book 3 has released earlier this year, so I'm looking forward to reading that sometime soon. I had a great time with this one. If you like zombies, if you like a different take on zombies, that mafia-esque politics and the nonsense that happens between gangs while we're in the apocalypse, and at some point someone's even like, yo, is this even important? We're trying to fucking survive here. Like, I think it's just a lot of fun, this one, and I very much enjoy it as, like, bookish popcorn, if that's what we're going to refer to it as. I don't necessarily think it's, like, a palate cleanser, because my palate was very full after Three Rose Plague and the second book, which I think was called Foot in the Grave, if I'm remembering that correctly. And the last one I had before I jump over to a TBR of sorts, or some indie sci-fi that I'm interested in, it's going to be Cerberus by Andy Peliquin. This is another one where it's like the task of the week. So we follow Nolan, who is an assassin for the government entity that be, and we do get that very sort of crime of the week vibe from these books. I've read the first two. Again, what I liked between books 1 and books 2 is that we got some more depth into Nolan's background and a little bit of like teasing for his past, and also where he could potentially go with these characters in the future. This is definitely one for people who love fast-paced sci-fi, military sci-fi with a bit of heart in it. What I really liked Nolan in a sense that he is so flawed. He is such a flawed character who, again, just wants to be good and is trying his best, but he is such a sum of his parts. And as we all are, as human, it felt very human to me to have this character who has come from something like a drug addiction, have someone who is currently addicted to that drug fall on their doorstep, and then goes, I could very easily fall back into those patterns. I want to fall back into those patterns because they're comfortable to me, but I will fight against everything not to do that, to help this person that obviously needs it on my doorstep, while also trying to be killed. Like, other people are coming for him from the background. So I've really enjoyed my time with this one as well. Very cool tech. So Nolan actually is also disabled, so there's disabled rep in there. He does wear suits that give him full body access. When he is not in those suits, he does need a wheelchair, and that wheelchair certainly comes in handy as some very cool tech that we have in this series. And I believe it's completed, and there's 14 of them. So if you do like those really snappy sci-fi books, you can go ahead and binge a 14-book series if that is something that you are interested in. Now, let's move on to the TBR. There's a lot. There's a lot of books that I would love to get to at some point. Lots and lots of sci-fi books, space operas, philosophical sci-fis, which I quite enjoy. I don't have any philosophical sci-fis on this particular list because they are a very specific flavor and niche that people might look towards. I tried to keep this one a little bit more broad for people who just like to dabble in sci-fi. But the TBR that I have 5 series on this one. Actually, one is a standalone that I would like to get to in the near future. The first one is going to be The Inner Universe, which is, for me, spoiler alert for next year, set for a 2026 read, and this is by Natalie Kelder. This is a queer normative space opera, and the first cover for River in the Galaxy is so beautiful. It looks like this. There is an actual ship in space, not a spaceship, but a ship in space. Is that a spaceship? I guess it is. I know very little about this one. I have such respect for Natalie as an author. I really loved her short story In the Advent of Winter, and I can't wait to jump into this series and just see what she's got going on. Now, I believe there is a main series, why 3 series? There's 3 books in the series, but I think they can all be read as standalones. And there's a couple of other stories that sort of intertwine, but that can also be read as standalones in the wider universe. So I'm looking at reading the first 3 in 2026, starting with River in the Galaxy. The next one I have here is one that I should be reading in September, at least the first book anyway. That is the Waystations trilogy by N.C. Scrimgeour. So sorry. I know I'm butchering the pronunciation of that name. And this one starts with Those Left Behind. I know very little about this. I know that when I asked on some social media platforms if there were any books out there based around Mass Effect, because I wanted to give Ryan a trad pub and an indie pub book that had some Mass Effect influences, this one came up, and we're going to be reading the first book together, hopefully in September, so that will be read sooner rather than later, and I hope that I really enjoy it. I, again, not a big, huge Mass Effect fan. I don't really love those big title games to play and sit down. I don't have the patience, but I do generally like them when they are in written form, so we'll see. The next one I have here is Titan Hoppers by Rob J. Hayes. I think this one just had the 4th book released. This is a sci-fi progression series. I don't know if it's sci-fantasy. It's in the sci-fi realm. I really like progression. Love it, in fact. Should read more of it. But every progression series has so many books or they're all large. I think Titan Hoppers, I think they're around 300 to 500 pages each, so they're not huge, but I am looking forward to giving these ones a go at some point. The next one I have here is one that's not actually out yet, but it is coming out, I want to say, September 5th. Yes, it says September 5th on Goodreads. We're going to go with that. This is Spectre by Krista Lund. Again, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Apologies if I didn't. This says 2 empires, 1 planet, rule the universe. And such a cool cover. I really love the dynamic. It looks like we've got sort of a motley crew and a big baddie with some blades on there. It says all Titans follow the rules until one doesn't. So I'm guessing this is going to be a huge military science fiction space opera-esque book that I'm looking forward to jumping into. And the last one that I have here is by an author that I read earlier either this year or last year, and I liked her story a lot. I liked the flowery, poetic prose of her world, and I realized that she had a space opera out. This is Skylark in the Fog by Helena L. Clove. This is another big one. I think it's around 500 to 600 pages. And it says, so when the universe falls to pieces, it doesn't mean your life has to, right? That comes later. And I believe this is a space opera as well. Again, like space covers with like the blues and the purples. I just love them so much. I really, really liked Helena L. Clove's writing, and I want to experience more of it. I'm waiting for book 2 in the Imbued duology. I'm not sure if that is the series name, but in the meantime, I do have Skylark in the Fog that I can go ahead and read. Those were some indie and self-pub sci-fi picks for Sci-Fi September. Let me know if you've read any of these. If you're interested in picking any up, let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, give one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.